Welcome everybody to our first user group call. It's the Power Platform UX, UI, and Allies. So UX, UI, and Accessibility Power user group call. Yeah. So we're going to get started. In the meeting today, we're asking everyone to be welcoming, respectful, and considerate of others. Express your viewpoints. Consider all sides on differences of opinion. Ask questions, use the chat feature, raise your hand if you want to come off mute and speak. And then just let us know of any tools or resources that you want to know more about, and we'll see what we can do to try and get that for you guys in future calls. So this call is being recorded. If you do not agree to participate in the recorded meeting, we ask that you leave and then come back later and watch the recording. But if you do decide to stay and you want to come off of mute later and ask questions and you want to share your face, you can. There's no obligation to do so, but please remain muted while in the call so that we can minimize any kind of background noise. And then use your meeting reactions to, let us know how much you like this call or the content, and, is all good things here. So this is something that I think Anya and Charles and myself, we've been wanting for a long time, and we're really glad to have this come together. So, hold on. Our agenda for today, we're going to do a quick introduction, talk about call for speakers, and then we're going to have presentations from Anya, Charles, and myself. And yes, our mission, vision, and values. So our mission is empowering a diverse global community by advocating for UX, UI, and accessibility within the Power Platform, driven by curiosity, empathy, and continuous learning, with our vision to become the leading force for inclusive, innovative, and accessible user experiences propelled by a worldwide multidisciplinary community. And our values are empathy, community, advocacy, education, curiosity, innovation, and inclusion. And we spent some time mulling over this and going back and forth, and I think we landed at a pretty good spot. So, what else? We've got our call for speakers. If any of you are interested in presenting in any upcoming calls, you can use our sessionize to submit topics, and we'll be happy to get those incorporated and see about getting you on a call in the future. And our presentations. So we have Anya, she's going to talk about user experience in the Power Platform. Charles is going to talk about user interface design in Power Platform, and then I'm going to give you an introduction to accessibility. So Anya, I believe you are up if you want to share your screen.
Thank you very much. Let me just do that. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Nice one. Okay. Thank you for a great intro to our group chat. So hello everyone, welcome from myself as well, and welcome to my session where I quickly cover the basic of user experience and give you a few examples how to apply them across Power Platform. Oh, I'm trying to change slides. So quickly about me, I'm Anna Black and I work as a lead D365 consultant for Hitachi. I started my career with Microsoft Business App just over 8 years ago. And on my very first project, I work with user experience team. And since then, I am really passionate about user experience and usability testing. But also over the years, I was involved in project where UX approach was completely ignored, and unfortunately, the final solutions were not as good as they should have been. So I want to promote the UX and encourage everyone to learn more about it and to make your solutions more user-friendly. So let's start with what user experience is. So to put it simply, UX refers to the end user interactions with an application. It's about more than just how an app looks. it's about how it works and feels. So UK covers several components like usability, accessibility, interaction design, and visual design. So think about the apps you use daily. The ones you like to use the most probably have a great UX. They are easy to navigate and they are intuitive and also visually appealing. So our aim in UX is to create similarly satisfying experiences for users by focusing on both functionality and emotional response. So when designing your Power Platform solution, make sure that the users will easily find information they need. So consider things like task flows and scenarios, and also add cues and guidance to get to a goal. It is essential to distinguish between UX and UI. We need to remember that even the best user interface will not guarantee the optimal user experience. And I'm sharing a couple of my favorite memes comparing the UA and UX. So understanding the psychology of design is crucial. Aaron Walter adapted the Maslow's hierarchy of needs to UX, creating a hierarchy of needs for design. The pyramid demonstrates what elements should be included in experience in order of their importance. So the foundation of the user needs is its functionality. So solution needs to perform the basic task it promises to do by existing. It's essential, as if it doesn't function, it will not meet the core needs of its users. So the next level is reliable. A solution must be consistently functional and can be used regularly without any failure. Next on the list is usable. So usable refers to how easy a solution is to learn, discover, and to use. And only when a solution is functional, reliable, and usable, it can become pleasurable. And pleasurable offers a satisfying user experiences and also delights users and bring them joy of use. So as I mentioned before, the key elements of UX include information architecture, which is organizing and structuring content for easy navigation and understanding. The interaction design indicates designing intuitive interfaces for smooth user interactions. The usability is ensuring that the product is easy to use and also to learn. And the last is the visual design, and it's about creating aesthetically pleasing and functional interfaces. So all these elements work together to create a seamless and enjoyable experience, guiding users through any task effortlessly. So to achieve a great UX, we need to focus on few key principles. So first one is consistency, and consistency is about maintaining uniform design patterns for a predictable user experience. It also helps users to feel more comfortable and confident when navigating through the systems. The next one is feedback, which ensures that users are provided with clear responses to their actions and also help them to understand the result of those actions. The next one is the affordance, which refers to the designing elements that intuitively suggest their function and making it clear what actions users can take. And the last is the simplicity, which is about keeping the interfaces clean and straightforward, minimizing any complexity to enhance the usability. So adhering to those principles ensures that the users can easily and effectively interact with your solutions, leading to higher satisfaction and engagement. So good UX is crucial for several reasons. So first of all, it enhances the user satisfaction and encourages continued use of a product. It also cuts down the development and support costs by preventing issues earlier on. Furthermore, it also increases productivity and efficiency, allowing users to accomplish tasks quickly and easily. And finally, a strong UX offers a competitive advantage and also can differentiate your solution to stand up among the others. So effective UX usually begins with user-centered design, and that involves user at every stage of the design process, ensuring their feedback and needs can shape the final product. So start with user research to understand things like needs and pain points. To do that, use surveys, interviews, or also observation, and that will help you to gather comprehensive user insight. Additionally, create user persona as that will guide the design decision and also any future prioritization. Another element is the design thinking. And the designing thinking is a powerful methodology that includes things like emphasizing, defining, ideation, prototyping, and testing. And finally, we need to be aware that UX is an iterative process and that which requires a continuous feedback and improvement. So by adopting those approaches, we can create products that are truly user-centric and capable of evolving based on the user needs and also their behaviors. Next, let's look into a few ways of applying UX rules to the various parts of Power Platform. So in Power Apps, we need to focus on intuitive layout and navigation with consistent design patterns. We also need to prioritize accessibility to ensure usability for all, including those with disabilities. And Kate will cover more about that at the next session. Additionally, it's essential to also optimize the performance to keep the app fast and responsive. For the Power BI, clarity and simplicity in data visualization are key. So make sure that you use appropriate chart types to effectively convey information. Also implement interactivity through things like filters and drill downs, and design the dashboards that are logically group information that can highlight key insights for easy comprehension by the users. Also, implementing UX in Power Automate is essential, and is essential for both the end users who use the automation, but also for the user who might be troubleshooting any potential issues. So always aim to design workflows with clear and easy to understand steps. Also implement robust error handling and effective notification for any issues. And to support the troubleshooting, ensure that the flow sequences are understandable at a glance. And additionally, always use clear and descriptive names. Again, that's for ease of any troubleshooting. We can also leverage AI for smarter and more intuitive user interactions. So thanks to the personalization, for example, we can tailor the user experience to any individual users and also make the content more relevant and engaging. You can also implement accessibility features such as screen readers, keyboard navigation, and also voice commands. So the consistency is essential across the entire Power Platform to ensure the optimized user experience. So develop a consistent design guidelines for use across all of the Power Platform tools. Also ensure a seamless transition between the different Power Platform components, and additionally use UI elements to create a familiar experience across all the tools. So if you're enjoying the subject of the user experience, I encourage you to learn and continue exploring UX principles and best practices. And also the knowledge is just a start. And the next thing on your journey is to apply and implement the UX techniques into your Power Platform project. And at last, iterate and gather feedback to continuously improve your solutions. I'm also sharing a few resources that can help you to explore UX even more. And obviously, I encourage you to attend our future sessions when we'll be covering more aspects of UX and also diving into more details into the things I covered today. So thank you very much for your attention, and I would like to pass it over to the one and only Charlie Sexton, who will cover for you the UI and Power Apps. Charlie, our virtual floor is yours.
Thank you, Anya. Yeah, I'm very excited to be here. This is amazing, our first user group. And let me just find my slides. I like how it's not showing me the thumbnails, so I don't know which is the right one. You'll have to tell me if this is correct.
Looks good.
Okay, that's good news. All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It's amazing how many people we have as well. It's, yeah, a huge pleasure to be here. So yeah, we're going to talk about user interface design, of course. So this is a subset of the user experience that Anya was talking about. We're going to focus on essentially what things look and feel like. Firstly, I'll tell you who I am. So my name's Charles Sexton. You can call me Charlie. Recently an MVP, and I'm most passionate, I suppose, with about Power Apps. And I blog about Power Apps. So there's a QR code that will take you to my blog. And I'm hoping to get more into YouTube videos as well, because I do enjoy that. It's just a case of finding the right setup for that. So as to who I am, so as I said, I'm very passionate about Power Apps. I'm working as a senior Power Platform developer / consultant for a company called Bridgeall. So it's a Microsoft partner working for a consultancy project by project. So basically every day I'm working with user experience, user interface and accessibility, and I'm very passionate about it. I got into web design when I was probably around 17 or 18, and since then I've always had an interest in it. So despite not being a graphic designer, it's something that I've worked a lot with trying to get better at it. Yes, so don't expect me to be at the professional level, but you can expect some knowledge from me on that. So yeah, I wanted to get a nice description as to what user interface design is. And I also wanted to make sure that I didn't overlap too much with what Anya was talking about with the user experience, because this is part of the user experience. But essentially, I'm going to be talking about user interface design from the perspective of what does it look like, what's the style of it, and what does it feel like? So how are we going to do this? Like, we know we need to create a design. How do we make that design look and feel good? Well, the first thing I wanted to talk about is symmetry. So I took this picture from a subreddit on Reddit called Mildly Infuriating, because this is the feeling that we get from something when it's asymmetrical, typically. So you can see that the way that it's cut doesn't make us feel good. Whereas if we look at something that's from oddly satisfying, we've got a beautiful mosque here and it's symmetrical. It makes us feel better. We like the look of it. So we're instantly seeing that there are feelings from what we're developing and what we're seeing. So how does this apply to something like Power Apps or Power Pages, for example, or model-driven apps where we have a form? If we have things that are asymmetrical, how's that making us feel, and how are we responding as a user to that? So if we're looking at this form in front of us, our eyes are scanning in multiple directions because we're starting off in the center at account information, then flying over to the full name and then down to email address and flying across to save account. So from a visual perspective, it's a struggle to deal with, and it doesn't look as good because it's asymmetrical. So all we have to do is just align things and make them symmetrical, and it suddenly feels much nicer, it's easier to use, and it looks more professional. And with the feelings again, if we're looking at something like the padding of elements, so looking at this lift or elevator, the people are crammed in, it feels uncomfortable, it's not nice to look at, especially because it's AI generated and their faces are like something from a horror film. But if we look at something that has padding, it has the space, it has that freedom that we're giving the elements, it feels so much better and we enjoy looking at it. So again, how does this relate to, say, something like Power Apps or Power Pages? Well, if we're not giving enough padding to those inputs, look at how they look at how they feel as well. And the Save Account button, it feels squashed and it doesn't feel good and it feels unprofessional. We need to give it that space and then it feels better. And we can instantly, subconsciously know that it looks better as well. Another point with the whole spacing and padding side, and we've got our spaceman there to help us out, is that when things are not spaced properly, then again, we feel uncomfortable with them. And looking at the full name and the user address on that form, you can see that there could be some confusion as to, you imagine you have more form elements. Which one's the email address? Is it the one above or the one below? Because they're so close together. So I'm not really sure. We need to give them the spacing so that people can understand, and grouping, of course. We'll talk a little bit about that under visual hierarchy. So if you've got elements that are similar, of course, you want to group them together and you want to space things apart that are not supposed to be within the same group, within the same elements. Also with visual hierarchy is when you're looking at this form, for example, where are your eyes drawn? So what's the first thing that you look at, the second thing you look at, the third thing you look at? It's something you'll want to consider with what your users are going to experience. So the first thing my eyes are drawn to are the full name and email address, but I don't yet know what those relate to. Instead, with the form that we showed before, your eyes should be drawn to the account information first. So you know, okay, I'm going to be entering details about my account or an account. And then we go through the form fields and then we have a call to action, which is appropriately colored. If you look at the Save Account button on the left, it's gray. Maybe it's disabled. I don't know. It kind of looks disabled. So how do we put all of this together so that we can make it easier to make things symmetrical, to pad them appropriately, to space them appropriately? Well, we can use something called the 8-point grid system. I think Anya might be doing a LinkedIn post about this in the future, right? And the 8-point grid system essentially is that our screen resolutions, whether it's a desktop, tablet, or mobile, they're all divisible by 8. So it goes back to bits and bytes of a computer being divisible by 8. So what we can use is an 8-point grid system to divide our screens or our displays into 8 pixels by 8 pixels, which means that we can then use those to make it more easy for us to make things symmetrical and to find appropriate and consistent padding and spacing. So I mentioned the button before about it being gray and maybe it's disabled. Colors are really important. So we've got some color schemes in front of us here. And what I would say is, as someone who is not a professional designer, I'm going to avoid things like the tetradic color scheme, because if I start using that and I have yellow, orange, blue, and purple in my design, there's no way that I'm going to make that look good. What I would recommend is that unless you're a professional designer, try to stick to the smaller color schemes. So 1 or 2 colors ideally. With monochromatic, say that your color scheme is purple, for example, you can use different shades of purple in order to get your message across. It's going to be much easier to make a professional design that way than trying to use 3 different colors. But there are color schemes out there, and I'd recommend using them so that you find complementary colors. So when you're using the colors, of course, you want to think about, well, how does it feel? So if I have buttons in my application and they're all green, is the user going to think that that means all of those buttons are good? Or should I consider using something else? And for the whole feeling of the application, or maybe a chatbot or whatever you're building in Power Platform, you want to think about what colors you're using and what feelings someone might get from those colors. You might be limited to their brand, so you might get design guidelines from the branding team and you have to stick to those. But there will be elements where you need to make a decision. Maybe it's with something like a delete button. How should you color it? Should you color it? What's it going to feel like? If you make that delete button pink, you're being playful. Is that a good thing? Probably not. So further on the side of colors, we're looking at a form field where I've just thrown in some random colors here and tried to make it a bit more colorful, and it doesn't look good. And it's because I haven't put in the care and consideration to think about the colors that I'm using. If you look at the full name and email address and also the save account, the color contrast is not good. So yeah, the accessibility side is not good for that. So let's stick to something that's consistent. Let's not throw too much color in there unless we know what that color is supposed to do. Now onto typography. So there are a few things wrong with this account, this form that we have on the screen at the moment. So if we're using serif fonts, for example, where they've got decorations on the letters, they're more difficult to read. If we're using all capitals, it's potentially more difficult to read. If we're using a font where it's maybe really narrow, or maybe like the save account where the two C's and the O look almost identical, it can be very difficult for us to read it. And that's difficult for me to read it just as someone who doesn't have any issue with reading words normally. What happens if someone has dyslexia, or maybe their eyesight isn't as good? There can be so many different reasons. Maybe they're in the sunlight with their laptop and it's difficult to see the screen. So let's stick to one or two fonts and one or two styles, or 1, 2, or 3 styles for that font. Not too many. Less is the better thing. Now, how do we get all of this information into a design? We've got so many things that we've talked about when it comes to spacing, padding, making sure that things are symmetrical. So, colors and typography, all of these different things, we want to be able to put them into our design and make it easy for ourselves so that we're not constantly double checking, oh, what did I use there? So what we can do for that is use something called design tokens. This is something I've been talking about for years, and we've now got Microsoft adopting it, Google adopting it, Apple adopting it. All of the big organizations now use design tokens. And what it means is essentially that you can get some variables into your design, and then whenever something needs to change within that design, you can change the original value and it will update across everything. So if we're looking at the example we've got here, we've got form text labels. They will always be a dim gray color. And we will apply form text label to all of our form text labels. So then it means that if we need to change from a dim gray color to something else, we just change that for the form text label and it will proliferate through everything. Now, this is not just limited to creating, say, a design template in a Canvas app, but design tokens are supposed to be used across multiple applications. So you create your design tokens, and then when you change something, it should change in your Canvas app, it should change in your Power Pages website, and wherever else you're using it. So that's the true benefit of design tokens. It goes across applications, not just within the one. So with all of that said, let's talk about consistency. So the whole point, and this goes hand in hand with design tokens, is that you design something once and then you can reuse it. And then if you do that, then you have consistency, which then makes your whole design and all of your designs feel cohesive, like they all belong together, and it feels professional. And it also means that because everything's consistent, the user knows what to expect. So from screen to screen, they understand what kind of experience you're already giving them. So then it's intuitive. So they can intuitively know where to look, where to click, and it feels much better. It's more professional. And it makes everything just so much easier. I have an analogy for this. So if you've watched Friends, there's this particular episode where Monica is flicking what looks like a light switch on and off. And she's saying, I don't know what it does. And she just keeps flicking it on and off. And then across the hallway in another apartment, you've got Phoebe blinking her eyes, thinking that she's switching the TV on and off. But what's really happening is that Monica is flicking that switch. So the whole point of this is that don't make something look like a light switch if it's not a light switch. So don't make something look like a button if it's not supposed to be a button, and all of that kind of stuff. Make things intuitive. So now I want to talk about internal consistency. So let's say that, okay, you're not very good at designing things. You're not a very visual person. There's no problem with that. You can follow some of the rules and you can get quite far with it, like we've done on the left-hand side. It doesn't look great. There are some things that we can do to make it look nicer, but it's not terrible. But the point of this is that let's keep everything to that level. Don't suddenly do something that looks a lot different because you know it looks better, because then it's inconsistent and the user suddenly has this jarring feeling where this doesn't look the way that I'm expecting it to feel. So it's not going to feel good. It's better to keep everything below average than to keep most of it below average and some things above average. Just make sure it's consistent. And then the other side to that is external consistency. So let's say that I open up an app on my phone and it looks like this. I'm thinking, what's that icon? We've got this weird arrow thing. Well, actually, the designer thought that that looked cool for a menu. So that opens the menu. But how am I supposed to know that? And why is the full name over on the right with the email address as well? It doesn't really make any sense to me because this is English. It's weird. And why is it below the input? So that might get blocked when I open the keyboard on my phone. So there's some confusing things there. It goes against what we expect. But if we have that hamburger icon, then 99.9% of people are going to understand what that means, because outside of our application, we're used to that when we're using technology. So what you want to think about is not just what's going on inside of your app, but think wider than that, or your Power Pages website, or whatever it is. Think about what people expect from technology generally, and make sure that you adhere to those kind of ways of doing things. So that's all I've got time to talk about for today. The last thing that I wanted to mention is that I have just talked about making things look pretty, which is always really good. We want to make things look as good as possible. But if you have to choose between making something look good and making it the user experience good, or making something look good and it being accessible, please choose the experience and the accessibility over the looks. It's very important. And yeah, with that said, we need to find out more about accessibility, right? So let's bring in Kat and she can tell us about it.
Yay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And are you all seeing that?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to give you guys an introduction to accessibility. I am Kat Schneider, Microsoft MVP, just recently renewed yesterday. So whoop, whoop, all of the MVPs out there who got renewed yesterday. That was a deluge on social media. At one point in time, I think that's all of the posts that I saw on social media. But anyway, I had spent 15 years in state government, where I was basically a content provider, whether it was for individual inspectors across the state that I was providing content for, or it was external users that needed access to our information. I was providing that content. So both internal and external communications and documents and so on and so forth. That is where I became intimately familiar with the accessibility rules and regulations associated in the US with federal and state government entities. 508 ADA accessibility is it's what I know. It was ingrained into my system for almost 15 years. So you might have been wondering what's up with this A11Y that's in our name, and it actually is the abbreviation for accessibility. It stands, or the 11 in between the A and the Y stands for the 11 letters that come between the A and the Y in the term accessibility. So it's a way for you to be able to talk about accessibility, especially in social media, where you might be limited to the number of characters. So it was just something that was created to help, get that message across. This was for accessibility. It's not something that everybody knows, but it's something that we would like for everybody to kind of get used to. So what is accessibility? It's, this concept of whether or not a product or service can be used by everyone and however they encounter it. So It's ensuring that digital products and environments can be used by everyone regardless of their ability or disability. It's intuitive interfaces, or creating those intuitive interfaces that are easy to navigate, understand, and interact for people with any diverse needs. Let's see. It's stopped working on me. Okay, here we are. Adhering to any guidelines and laws such as web content accessibility guidelines, 508, Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act. But it's just ensuring that accessibility standards are being met. It's supporting tools like screen readers, magnifiers, and voice recognition to help users with disabilities. It's also identifying and eliminating obstacles that prevent people with disabilities from accessing any kind of digital content and services. So one thing that I really would like to hammer home is that a disability is no longer considered a personal health condition, where it is in regards to just getting access to content. Basically, the disability is considered to be a mismatched human interaction. So it's creating something that somebody just happens to not be able to access because of a mismatch. It's not that they could never access this information, it's whether or not that information is being made available in a manner in which they can access it. So some requirements for accessibility in the US, we have Title II and Title III of the Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act. European Union, we've got Web Accessibility Directive and the European Accessibility Act. United Kingdom, there's the Equality Act of 2010, or Northern Ireland's Disability Discrimination Act of 1995. But pretty much all of this comes together in the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG, which is basically the detailed requirements for meeting accessibility standards. Current standards are set at version 2.2, and it looks like they actually have a draft version of 3 that is soon to be coming. So some common accessibility issues. Insufficient color contrast ratios. So that was something that Charles had talked about a little while ago. There's a minimum of 4.5 to 1 contrast for text elements. There's actually I think, higher contrast ratio that's required for headings. But for anything that is non-text, there's a 3.1 contrast ratio that's required. Using only color to indicate information. It's try to make sure that you're including some sort of text and other formatting clues along with that color to convey the information, because sometimes with colorblind folks, they're unable to tell the difference between, one color and another, or that colors might be washed out and they just miss the information that's being presented by color alone. Missing alt text. Alt text is used by screen readers. So if you don't have it in there, somebody who requires the use of a screen reader in order to be able to capture the information or see the information that's being presented, hear the information that's being presented, they need that alt text in order for them to understand what's going on and what you're trying to present to them. So just being sure to provide descriptions for all of your images. And with the rise of AI, it's very, very easy to try and get alt text added. So missing captions. So any videos that you're posting or that you're trying to provide information along on your website, through a Power App, through a Power BI report, whatever the case may be, just ensuring that you're providing captions for all of your videos. This is for people who have the need to see what is actually being spoken because they can't hear it. Or maybe it's that it's just really, really loud and they're unable to hear it. So having the ability to turn captions on can help more than just those who are deaf. Using mouse-only navigation, just make sure to include your tab ordering for people who cannot use a mouse. So making sure that you're not jumping all around the screen, ensuring that you're moving in a logical order from one input to another input, and just being sure that whatever it is that you're creating does have some sort of navigation that can be used without a mouse. So some other accessibility features, using navigational headings. So having header 1, header 2, and I would love to talk about this so much more and how I've been able to implement things like this within a Power App when we don't really have a good, useful way of doing it. But having definite identifying headings and having that hierarchy so that you understand that, hey, this is the big one. We're in this section here. This is what we're going to talk about. Let's see, line spacing. So like Charles said earlier, line spacing and padding, making sure there's enough space to breathe for somebody's brain to actually take the information in, comprehend it, and be able to take a second to take another breath before reading some more. It's just making sure that there's enough space and that everything is cram-packed into one small space. So if you need to break it up into multiple sections, into multiple pages, that is acceptable for you to do so that you're not overwhelming somebody who's trying to use whatever it may be that you're creating. Having the ability to have adjustable text size. So this is something that you could get creative with, but it's also something that needs to be made available, especially in Power Apps. Sometimes, folks just need that, 54-point font on their screen so that they can see what they're reading. And then other people are like, no, this is too much font for me. I need it smaller. So just giving people the ability to get an adjustable text size here. Forms, big point, making sure you have labels. Please do not put a form out there that does not have a label. That is not clear for anybody about what is going on, what they're required to enter, what's going. They need labels. Help text. This can be help text that's listed in your input control, say a text box, where you have just example of what we're looking for in this text box. It can be your help text that pops up on hover so that, when somebody hovers over a field, even if they've started typing something in, they can still get a little bit of information about what it is that's supposed to be going into a particular field. Oh, here we are. We're just going to do both of these at the same time. Clear instruction and then clear error identification. So making sure whatever forms that you have out there is very clear to the user what it is that they're supposed to be doing in a certain section. And if they don't enter it in correctly, making sure it's very clear and not using just color alone, that there is an error. So having on-screen error messages, having real bold outline on the section, changing some fill, changing italics, whatever the case may be, but just very clearly identifying that there is an error with the field so that they're not trying to submit and wondering why it's not submitting. What else? Making sure you're putting focus borders on all of your input controls. That way, if somebody steps away from the screen or they have to, flip back and forth between windows while they're doing something, they don't get lost in what they're doing. Just making sure that you're using a border and that border is very clearly visible, but also making sure you have borders on many of your controls. So if you have a input field and that input field, the background color is very close or matching very close to the color of your actual background, it's very hard for somebody to realize that input field is there. So just making sure that you're providing borders where it makes sense, so that people can see what's going on your form, but also that they know that this is the control that they're working with at that point in time. But one other thing, if you really wanted to be a rock star, live large in big house, 5 cars, is giving yourself a method for reporting accessibility issues. So if somebody is having an issue with actually accessing your content, just give them an ability to be able to click a button and enter in, hey, I was trying to access this and it's impossible for me to do this or that, or like, because you don't know what you don't know. So if you have the ability to get some information in, and maybe you're doing an iterative process where, you know, you're making updates here and there, maybe it's something that needs to be addressed pretty quickly. Just making sure that, you know, when you don't know what you don't know, that you got a way to collect information to help you get more understanding, if that makes sense. So accessibility and inclusive design. So accessibility, inclusive design, they're different, but they do share a common goal. Accessibility is more about updating products to remove barriers to access so that they can be used by everybody, whereas inclusive design is more about creating products from the get-go so that they are designed for use by everybody. Both prioritize the user's needs and experiences, but accessibility is more concerned with ensuring that a disability is no longer preventing somebody from actually accessing the information. And inclusive design is more about ensuring there's access for all as much as possible to begin with. So, designing for all. Here you can see on the right side, there is a chart that's kind of showing some various disabilities, whether they are permanent, temporary, situational. These disabilities, they affect various components. Some of them, permanent disabilities, there's no go backs. Like, it is what it is, and you just got to deal with it. Whereas temporary disability is something that could be not quite long term. It's not till the end of life, but you know, it's for longer than just, hey, I can switch this on and off. Temporary, it's something that it's going to affect somebody for a little while. And where situational is going to be something that is quick. It's going to be, you know, you could change it maybe if you wanted. But it's something that it's just in this situation, there is some stop for whatever the reason or whatever the case may be. So when you're designing for one, you typically will end up benefiting many by taking those various designs into consideration. So do not consider that a permanent situation of somebody being blind that they need a screen reader. Like that is going to be a requirement, but somebody who has, say, ADHD, like myself and several others, many others that we're finding now because of COVID, sorry, but having captions on, having the ability to listen to something, just because you can see it doesn't necessarily mean that you're able to consume the information, that sometimes you need an additional object, additional way of getting that information in to be able to understand it. I know many people, they need to have captions turned on while they're watching movies or while they're watching TV, because yes, they can hear it. Yes, they are watching what's going on, but they're not able to actually get the information and process the information if they don't have captions on. Or even one other situation that I'm facing currently is having dark mode. So I live in Florida, and in Florida, we have the bright sunshine. We are known as the Sunshine State. So having the ability to have dark mode on your phone so that you can use your phone makes it a lot easier for you to be able to see what's going on, because you're not fighting with that backlit screen as much to see what's happening, because the sun is washing everything out. So just making sure that you're taking into consideration your users, who's trying to get access to what this information is, and making sure that they have the ability to access it one way or another. And if you don't know how they're accessing it or what's going on, ask them. Ask and see what it is that there's the potential that you could do to help them out. So again, giving the ability to submit a button says, hey, I'm having trouble accessing this, goes a long way in helping you to figure out some of these things that you don't know that you don't know. So I just have like a bunch of resources for you guys. So there's the WCAG2 overview, their web accessibility initiative. This site, www.voia.org, they have an accessibility audit and check that you can do. There's some guidance for web accessibility and ADA from US government. There's the Web Accessibility Directive, Standards and Harmonization for, I believe this is European Union, United Kingdom's digital accessibility laws. And then I think, as Charlie was stating before, most major organizations, they've got their own UI type stuff set up. Microsoft Inclusive Design. This was something that was actually presented at I believe it was the accessibility. No, it was one of their summits. It's something along the lines of accessibility summit. They have it every spring. I think last year or this year it was their 14th year of having it. But last year in 2023 is when they put out the Microsoft Inclusive Design, and it gives you a lot of material to think about what inclusive design actually means, but also how can you incorporate inclusive design into what you're building. So there's plenty of activities and cards, ways of thinking about how do we build this, that, or the other, and how does it affect various folks. So material design by Google, that is also a really great source of information. And then, I'm a very big color person. So the last few that I have for you are actually for colors and contrast. But this color contrast accessibility validator from color.a11y.com is great for checking the contrast and how effective it is, or how much it meets the WCAG standards. Color Hexa is probably one of my favorite websites when I'm trying to find out information regarding color, because you can put in a color and it will tell you how somebody with various types of color blindness actually perceives said color. So it's one of my favorite websites. Color Kit itself is one that you can check. Say you have a theme file out of a design guide, and you want to check, which colors you could use from your design guide for, text or headers or buttons or what have you. You can actually build out your theme, and it will tell you which colors work so that you have an appropriate color contrast. So there's a whole matrix that's involved, and then you can update your color scheme or your color files so that it meets various requirements. I mean, it runs the gamut. It's a really great tool. So all three of these tools that I just posted up here, they're great for checking color and what's available and what you could use, and various other bits. But all of these resources are really great. So that's it for me. I just wanted to say thank you. If you liked this content or you wanted to see some more content, this is how you can get in touch with me. So, Charlie, do you want to talk about this, or you want me to roll it out on you?
I'm happy for you to continue on to the next bit if you're happy to.
All right. Well,
thank you.
Next call for next month. Surprise, we're going to have April Dunham on. She's going to talk about using AI and Copilot to build better apps. And we're going to have Andrew Smalley talking about 10 usability heuristics for user interface design. But it will be on Sunday, August 11th, 4 p.m. UTC. And we are sticking with the 11th just because 11 runs right there in the middle of Ally, and it works for us. So there may be some slight maneuverability with the times and future calls just to kind of get around the globe and help folks, say, in Australia, instead of showing up at 2 a.m. in the morning, maybe we can get them on a call at a more reasonable time. But we want to try and make this a global community call. So making sure that, people from all around the globe can participate would be really, really useful for that. So I just want to say thank you all for attending. We really appreciate you all taking the time to sit here with us and listen to what we have to say. We're going to make the recording from today available up on our YouTube channel. You can reach us on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and our Linktree. So with that, that is all that we have. If anybody wants to come off of mute or share their camera or, what have you, feel free to do so.
I've unmuted everyone. So Sandra, if you would like to talk, go ahead. I've probably pronounced your name incorrectly. I'm sorry about that. Hey, Sean.
Just a mistake.
Oh,
Just a
there we go.
mistake. I will give it to Shane. So
Okay. Hi, Sean.
Hey, Sandra, you can feel free to take my question. Thank you so much. I can't wait to see the beginning. I missed like the whole first half. I guess I just want to say thanks that you guys are doing this and that there is so much attention towards accessibility, because I felt so lost in Power Apps on research. I saw like 2 blogs when I had to even do like the color contrast that Kat and Charles you were talking about. And I was like, okay, this is great for my custom HTML website, but how do I do it in Power Apps?
Yeah, I definitely would love to have like a full 1-hour session about, okay, let's break down color contrast in Power Apps. So, and I've got some great people that I would like to get on the call to actually talk about that are actually doing that in their Power Apps. So stay tuned. Future calls.
Yeah, lots of plans and ideas for what we can do with this. Because, of course, it's such a broad topic. User experience, user interface, and accessibility. We could spend the next 12 months just talking about accessibility. But really important.
I could talk about it for weeks, like nonstop. We could just all the time. Let's see, how long can we see if we could set a world record? The longest amount of time anybody has spent without taking a break talking about accessibility.
Just leave the meeting running. We'll keep going.
Yeah. We'll just record the whole thing and submit it to Guinness World Records. Anybody else? Any thoughts about what content anybody else would like to see?
I have a question. How far you will go with UX against the money, the hours you get? For example, what is average that you spend on UX or designing of the hours? Because I think you can go a long way, weeks. I spent hours of the app look and feel, right? What is average to spend on it?
There's going to be a consultant's answer to that. It depends, of course. It is going to depend on like how much budget do you have, how far do you need to go with it. Like for some of the apps, you might not need to worry about a mobile version. For others, you do. And if you have to create a mobile version, then maybe you're taking twice as long to develop it. So it does depend. And to what level as well. Sure. So one thing that I didn't talk about that I've talked about in the past is perfectionism. So I'm a perfectionist, so I could spend a crazy amount of time just trying to make something perfect. But if you don't have the budget, maybe just take it to 80% of being perfect. And then the last 20%, you just have to concede that I don't have the budget to do that, to make it look perfect. But 80% is good enough.
Thanks. Yes.
Parvez. Hi.
Yeah, hi guys. That was brilliant. Really enjoyed that. Thank you so much for doing this. A quick one from me. I think Anna touched on it slightly around the UX element within Power Automate, and that's not a perspective I'd considered before. So that was, something I think should be talked about a lot more. UX not just for the end user of the app, but the person who's going to be maintaining and supporting it as well. That's something quite different, I think, and needs to be spoken about a bit more. So if we can do a session on those sorts of things, like the UX within the design experience or the developers kind of user experience as well, that's really good.
Yeah, I know for certain, like all of the bits and pieces we have talked. We want to do all of the things.
Yeah.
But this group is specifically for like finding out, like I said before, like we don't know what we don't know. Let's learn about some of these things that other people know that we didn't know that we didn't know. So having that to share would be really great. So, feel free to take a stab at it too, because this is not intended to be that we are the experts. We're sharing our knowledge. So
Everyone has more to learn. Yeah, definitely. It's quite interesting with the Power Automate side of things, how you've got the classic designer and the new designer, and then seeing the feedback from people as to what they find to be a good user experience and what's not a good user experience. So, of course, Microsoft are constantly battling to create the best developer experience for us. It's tricky. It's tricky for all of us.
Anya, come off mute. Speak.
I lost like the last 2 minutes. I'm so sorry. I have lots of internet issues today. Was that a question directed at me? Was that a
there was
question
no
directed?
question. No, I was just going to say to everyone, unfortunately, yeah, your internet's been playing up for you. Plus, you've been so busy with your client work. So sympathies from us.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
But yeah, for everyone who's taken the time out today, that's just incredible. Can't believe how many people we've had. It's just, yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. So we appreciate everybody.
Thank you so much for joining and keep submitting your sessions, please.
Yes.
Yeah, we would love people to talk for us. And you can, if you want to, just talk for 15 minutes. 15 minutes is quite easy to do. And if it's your first talk, then that's the perfect opportunity. My first talk was a 10-minute lightning talk, and I felt like that was a really good way to get an introduction into presenting.
And if you need any support, just reach out to us directly as well.
Yep. We're happy to have all of the talks and have all of the presenters. So we are now just over time. So I'd like to go ahead and say thank you again for everybody who joined us today. From, Charles, Anya, and myself, we appreciate all of you taking the time. So.
Thank you, everyone. See you next time.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.